You're listening to Masters of Reinvention with Angela Watson Robertson, the ultimate guide to changing your life. Get ready, because that change starts now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Watson Robertson, and welcome to Masters of Reinvention, your ultimate guide to changing your life. I'm so glad you're here. Each month on this show, I interview a master in the art of reinventing your life and your health to help inspire you and empower you to live your best life. Today, I have Georgina Cannon with me to discuss her recent book, The Third Circle Protocol. And for the next 60 minutes, we'll be exploring how you can learn to relate to yourself and others in a healthy, vibrant, and evolving way so that all of your relationships can be more pleasurable and life-affirming. Georgina Cannon is an author and award-winning board-certified clinical hypnotist, NLP and CBT trainer and clinician, and lecturer at the School for Continuing Studies at the University of Toronto. She has her doctorate in metaphysical counseling and is recognized as the public face of hypnosis in Canada and a respected member of the mainstream health community. Georgina, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a great, this is my first Facebook interview. I'm so excited.
Oh, well, great. Yes, we are streaming on Facebook Live as well. So glad to have you. First, I wanted to say I absolutely love your book. I've got it right here, The Third Circle Protocol. I just finished it this past week. Thanks so much for putting your work out into the world. It was a really good read, and I already can tell there's some areas in different relationships in my life that I'm going to apply the protocol. So thank you so much for writing the book.
Good. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it. It's important that we understand how we relate to each other, because we're in relationships all the time, as you know.
Yes, as you mentioned, the relationship doesn't have to be an intimate relationship or mother-daughter or parent, even relationships with anyone we interact with when we're out in the world.
Right. So even when we go into the supermarket, for instance, and we, hand over our groceries to the cashier, that's a relationship. She expects something from us, which is money, and we expect something from her, which is efficiency and usually, pleasantness. We expect her to be servicing and looking as if she enjoys having us there. She's greeting us in a way. So we have expectations, and she has expectations of us. And if those aren't met, then we get let down and we get irritable, which happens everywhere.
Mm-hmm. So let's dive right in and talking about how the Third Circle Protocol can help improve the relationships of all of our listeners. Mm-hmm. So if someone comes to you and is a client and says, hey, I want to improve, this type of relationship or any relationship, let's just right now apply it to any type of relationship in their life. What would you say would be the first step that you could apply towards any kind of relationship and improving it?
Okay, the first thing we have to do is have a relationship with ourselves. And we have to know what our values are and what our priorities are and what our absolute bottom line needs are in every relationship, what we would like to have, our wants, but also what we're prepared to give. So it's key that we understand all that about a relationship with ourselves. So if someone says to me, well, my values are kindness, respect, integrity. So I go through the list they've given me and I say, are you kind to yourself? Do you have integrity with your thoughts and your actions? Do you respect yourself? And quite often they'll go, not really. So that's where boundaries don't exist, because if we don't live our values, then if we don't know who we are, then how can anybody else know? That's the first step.
Yeah, I like that, really starting with our relationship with ourselves. And I think that often people do overlook that. They think, well, I'm really good to everyone else. But then when you turn around and ask them, hey, how do you treat yourself? Do you treat yourself as well as you treat others? If that answer is no, then I like how you're saying, let's go back and look at the relationship to yourself.
Yeah.
And often clients tell me that they go from relationship to relationship. You talk about this a little bit in your book. And they seem to be, and this I'm more referring to intimate relationships here, and they seem to be drawn to the same type of person over and over. So obviously you mentioned first start with yourself, but when we do want to take that next step and go into a relationship, an intimate relationship with someone else, but we seem that we keep being drawn to the same type of person and it's not working, why would you say that is? Is there a karmic connection there?
It's interesting. There may be a karmic connection, but I don't let people blame karma. It goes on the list of blaming. You blame your mother, you blame your boss, you blame karma. Come on, we've got to look here first. One of the reasons is that if we're born into a family that's emotionally distant or abusive in some way, that gets stamped into us as a new baby as love. That comes across as love. So we go looking for that sort of person, which is why people who get caught up with people who are abusive, either emotionally or physically, go from one to another, because it feels familiar and they get drawn to it. So you have to recognize the red flags. So we look at the pattern. Sometimes we regress them back to the beginning of that pattern of feeling less than, and where did that start? And then we change that perception, because we're changing the blueprint here. If you change the perception, then they start looking for different types of people. So they don't come into the clinic anymore and say, how come I always choose losers, which is what they say. Mm-hmm. Both men and women, by the way, say that.
Yeah. Okay, so really looking at not always just choosing what feels familiar or comfortable. That might be a hook or a trigger from past trauma or past dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah. So when people come in the clinic and say, Georgina, I've got to tell you, I met this fantastic person at a party last night. I think he's my soulmate, or she's my soulmate. We instantly connected. It was like we looked into each other's eyes and we knew each other. And part of me is going, oh, okay, let's just see what's familiar here. Because it's not always wonderful.
Okay. You mentioned in your book that we often have an unspoken contract with people that we're in relationship with. What do you mean by unspoken contract?
Okay, you and I are sitting here talking. You have an expectation of me, and I have an expectation of you. We have, at that very basic level, we didn't discuss it. If we were in a family relationship or an intimate relationship and we hadn't discussed the expectation of the relationship, not just each other, we'd be let down all the time. That's why people get upset. That's why they don't understand what's gone wrong with the relationship. A husband will come in and say, she's not the woman I married. When I got married to her 7 years ago, she wasn't like this. And I ask him if he's the same as he was 7 years ago. We don't renew our connection. We don't come back and say, what is important to you now? What makes you feel loved now? What makes you feel needed now? What are the 5 things that I can do for you that make you feel loved? We don't say that to our friends, our relations, our loved ones, our lovers. We don't, because we get used to each other and we go along a pattern as if we haven't changed. We take a snapshot, and that doesn't work. Everything changes.
Yes, that makes sense. I know that I've seen when I work with clients that sometimes it's just uncomfortable to have those conversations. And so often, especially when you've been in a relationship for a long time, you just want to, not really, quote unquote, rock the boat. Right. And have those conversations. But it sounds like you're recommending that often throughout the relationship to check in. Yeah. And really check in on those expectations and touch base on how things are going.
Yeah, the other thing is that in the book, there is that tool. In fact, there's a few tools that you can use, even if you've been in a relationship a long time and it's not very communicative. You can say, sweetheart, I was thinking, I would really love to know 5 things that make you feel loved. 5 things that I can do. And here's a piece of paper, write them down. And I'm going to write down 5 things that make me feel loved. That changes the dynamic. It brings it up to date without being threatening in any way. And it really works.
All right, great. Okay, listeners, so if you're having any issues with your relationships, the first step is to go to that person. It sounds like it could be anyone, but it might work really well in an intimate relationship and say, hey, what are the 5 things or 5 ways that really help you feel loved? Mm-hmm. And then let us know how that works. So question for you about the protocol, the Third Circle protocol. So you mentioned before we came on the air that this protocol can work to improve all kinds of relationships. Yes. Can you explain a little bit more about the different types of relationships that this protocol can help with?
Sure. Everything from in-laws to the professionals in your life, the doctor, lawyer, personal trainer, chiropractor, massage therapist, to your boss or your employee. Because if you operate from your value system, that relationship will always reflect your value system and reflect you. So it doesn't matter what they bring in. You set the window for your view of the world. So if your view of the world is through respect and kindness, is that's one of your values, and you will treat everybody that way, you'd be surprised how people change the other end. It's sort of, they get confused at first, and then they just fall in line because they feel respected, and they feel heard, they feel your kindness. It's miraculous in a way, especially with teenagers. Mm-hmm.
So to some extent, it sounds like you're working on yourself.
Yes.
And you're not necessarily having all of these. It's not that you're necessarily saying, hey, I'm going to go to the checkout person at the store and I'm going to have this intimate conversation with them about our expectations of relationship, but you're applying the protocol to yourself,
yes,
into your life, into your values and your framework, to the point where it will probably affect every relationship, even your relationship with, your mailman or anyone you interact with. Am I right?
Yeah. The only time it's different is when you're dealing with aging parents.
Okay.
And then you have to use their values rather than your own. So
okay, that makes sense.
And quite often they're very different.
Okay.
Because we can't force our values onto anyone else.
That makes sense. And we'll get to the aging parents. I have several questions about that. That's a topic I'm very interested in a later segment. But tell me, have you had more luck with one type of relationship over another with the protocol? Is there one relationship that you feel like this has really helped more than another type?
Yes. Married couples with kids, teenagers, particularly teenagers, because they can be very disruptive. They feel they have no power, and this protocol gives them power. It helps them build a new relationship with their parents that everyone has agreed to. Because again, we take snapshots, so parents are inclined to treat their 15-year-old as if they're 5 years old. And the 15-year-old wants to be 25-year-old with the freedoms and the way of life, except they're still 15. So what happens is they form a contract using values, priorities, what they absolutely need. And it's amazing when the kids sit down and really think about what they absolutely need. Always respect comes in. To be heard comes in. And the parents are always surprised, which surprises me. And they form this new contract on both sides. So once a teenager realizes that their parent also wants to be heard and also wants respect, and then they form this relationship. And with kids, by the way, we check in more often. Sometimes, depending on the situation, sometimes it's every month, to make sure this relationship creature, I call it, like a third circle, is healthy and strong and vibrant and still working.
Tell me more what you mean by snapshot that we create.
Well, I don't know if you go to family gatherings at all, but when you go to family gatherings, people usually revert back to what they were. If elder sister is a bully, then she'll be a bully. When parents will say quite often, you shouldn't be doing that. They do the should thing. And relationships between siblings comes up as if you were kids. I've seen not elderly, but adult brothers hit each other on the shoulder like they were 10 years old. And we just go back to that. And it's the same thing when we're dealing with people we haven't seen for a while. I had that discussion with my sister, as a matter of fact, who lives in Israel. And we realized that we had taken snapshots of each other. I'm the elder, she's the younger sister. And we were still, in some cases, still talking to each other and reacting the same ways we did when we were kids. So she would tell me something that she was trying or experimenting with, and my instinct was to say, oh, don't be silly. I treated her like I did when I was 12, and she was 7 years younger. once we realized that, it changed the dynamic profoundly because we now see each other the way we are.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we bring the instinct up, from the subconscious to the conscious. We bring it to the forefront and we realize what we're doing and we stop it.
Yeah, I've had that experience as well where I start acting maybe like my 13-year-old self when I'm back hanging out with my family. So hold that thought. We are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will explore more about how you can improve all the relationships in your life. You're listening to Masters of Reinvention with Angela Watson Robertson and my guest, Georgina Cannon, author of The Third Circle Protocol. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.